The HSS Defiance moved through the dark emptiness of space like a small fish in a very large ocean. It was not a warship. It was not even a particularly impressive ship. It was a cargo vessel, built to carry supplies from Earth to the distant mining colonies that humans had established over the past 200 years. Captain Park Do-hyun sat in his chair on the bridge and watched the stars pass by on the main screen. It was a quiet day. He liked quiet days. Lieutenant Yoon Hana sat at the communications station, checking messages from Earth Command. There was nothing important. Just the usual reports and updates. Engineer Baek Tae-ho was somewhere below decks, probably talking to the ship's engines like they were his children. The man loved machines more than people. But that was fine. His machines always worked perfectly. "Captain," said Lieutenant Yoon suddenly. Her voice had changed. It was sharper now. "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Captain Park leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of strange?" "Energy signatures. A lot of them, coming out of hyperspace about 50,000 kilometers from our position." The main screen flickered and changed. Instead of empty space, it now showed ships. Many, many ships. Captain Park counted them quickly in his head, and then stopped counting because there were too many. 200 at least. Maybe more. They were large vessels with sharp angles and dark metal hulls. They looked like weapons given form. "What the hell?" whispered someone on the bridge. Captain Park stayed calm. He had been in the military for 20 years before taking this cargo job. He had seen things that would make most people lose their minds. A bunch of alien ships was not going to make him panic. "Lieutenant Yoon, are they trying to communicate?" "Yes, sir. I'm receiving a transmission now. Should I put it on screen?" "Do it." The screen changed again. Now it showed a face. It was not a human face. The creature had gray skin that looked like stone, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of teeth that were clearly meant for tearing meat. It wore armor that was decorated with symbols and medals. This was a military commander. That much was obvious. "Attention, unknown vessel," the creature said. Its voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. "I am High Arbiter Volmek of the Velthari Galactic Empire. You have entered space that now belongs to the Empire. Your species and all its territories are hereby claimed in the name of Emperor Kolvoth. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Captain Park stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he made a sound. It started small, just a little noise in his throat. Then it grew. His shoulders began to shake. And then he was laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh that comes from deep in your belly and makes your eyes water. Lieutenant Yoon looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir?" Captain Park waved his hand, trying to stop laughing but failing. I'm sorry. It's just... Did you hear that? They're claiming our territory. They think they can just show up and take everything." Lieutenant Yoon's lips twitched. Then she smiled. Then she started laughing too. Within seconds, half the bridge crew was laughing. Some of them didn't even know why they were laughing. It was just contagious. Engineer Baek's voice came over the internal speakers. "What's happening up there?" "Did someone tell a joke?" "You could say that," Captain Park replied, wiping his eyes. "We've got about 200 alien warships outside, claiming Earth's territory in the name of some empire we've never heard of." There was a pause. Then Baek started laughing too. On the Velthari flagship, High Arbiter Volmek was not laughing. He was staring at his screen with all 4 eyes, watching the tiny human ship. He had conquered worlds. He had destroyed civilizations. He had ended species that dared to resist the Empire. And these humans were laughing at him. "High Arbiter," said Subcommander Relics carefully. "Perhaps they did not understand the transmission. Should we send it again?" They understood," Volmek growled. They are mocking us. His hands tightened into fists. No one mocked the Velthari Empire. No one mocked him. On the Defiance, Captain Park had finally stopped laughing. He took a deep breath and straightened his uniform. All right, enough fun. Lieutenant Yoon, send them a response. What should I say, sir? Captain Park thought for a moment. Tell them. Tell them we appreciate the offer. But we'll pass. Wish them safe travels. Lieutenant Yoon typed the message and sent it. She was grinning the whole time. The response from the Velthari was immediate. High Arbiter Volmek appeared on screen again, and this time his stone-gray face was darker with anger. You dare to refuse? You dare to dismiss the might of the Velthari Empire? Your tiny vessel is nothing against our fleet. We have conquered 10,000 worlds. We have ruled this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. You will surrender, or you will be made an example, Captain Park sighed. Look, friend, I don't know who told you that you could just go around claiming other people's stuff, but that's not how things work. We're not interested in fighting you. We're a cargo ship. We carry supplies. That's it. So why don't you take your fleet and go conquer someone who actually cares? Volmek's eyes burned with fury. You will regret those words. The transmission ended. Sir, said Lieutenant Yoon, they're powering weapons. Shields up, Captain Park said calmly. Let's see what they've got. The Velthari flagship fired. A beam of bright blue energy shot across space and struck the Defiance directly. On the bridge, everyone felt a small vibration. That was all. The lights didn't flicker. The ship didn't shake. Nothing exploded. Lieutenant Yoon checked her instruments. Shield integrity at 99.8%, sir. Power drain is minimal. Captain Park nodded slowly. He wasn't surprised, but he was a little disappointed. He had hoped the aliens would at least be interesting. On the Velthari flagship, there was chaos. Officers were shouting at each other. Technicians were checking and rechecking their instruments. High Arbiter Volmek stood in the middle of it all, absolutely still, staring at the human ship on his screen. That's impossible, Sub-Commander Relics whispered. That was a direct hit from our main cannon. It should have destroyed them completely. Aye, fire again, Volmek commanded. All ships, full broadside, destroy them. 200 Velthari warships opened fire at once. The space around the Defiance turned into a storm of energy beams and missiles. The attack went on for 30 seconds. Then, it stopped. When the light faded, the Defiance was still there. Completely undamaged. Not even scratched. Engineer Bake's voice came over the speakers again, sounding almost bored. Hey, Captain. Whatever they're shooting at us with, it's actually recharging our backup power cells. Should I send them a thank you note? Captain Park smiled. It was not a kind smile. I think it's time we sent them a different kind of message. Charge the forward cannon. 0.1% power. 0.1%, sir? Lieutenant Yoon asked. That's almost nothing. I know. I don't want to be rude. The Defiance's forward cannon glowed with golden light for just a moment. Then, it fired. A single beam crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second. It struck a Velthari destroyer on the edge of the formation. The destroyer vanished. There was no explosion. No debris. The ship simply stopped existing. The beams continued. 2 more destroyers disappeared. Then there was silence. Captain Park leaned back in his chair. Lieutenant Yoon, open a channel to the alien commander. Channel open, sir. High Arbiter Volmek, Captain Park said. That was 0.1% of one of our weapons. We have many weapons. I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. We don't want trouble. But if you bring trouble to us, we will end it. Do you understand? There was no response from the Velthari fleet. But they didn't fire again. Captain Park waited. This was far from over. He could feel it in his bones. On the edge of the sensor range, more ships were appearing. Many more ships. The Velthari had called for help. The new ships kept coming. They poured out of hyperspace like water from a broken dam. Captain Park watched them appear on the main screen and felt his stomach tighten. 10 ships, then 50, then 100. They kept coming until there were over 1,000 Velthari warships surrounding the Defiance. "Well," said Engineer Bake over the speakers, "that's a lot of angry aliens." Lieutenant Yoon's hands moved quickly over her console. "Sir, I'm intercepting their communications. They're calling us a Class Omega threat. That seems to be their highest danger level." "Good to know we made an impression," Captain Park replied. He didn't let his worry show on his face. A captain had to stay calm for his crew. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what's happening. Request backup." "Already done, sir. Admiral Choi Subin is on her way with the 7th Defense Fleet." Captain Park nodded. Admiral Choi was good. One of the best. If anyone could handle this situation, she could. But she was hours away, and there were 1,000 enemy ships outside. On the Velthari flagship, High Arbiter Volmek stood before a holographic display of the battlefield. His 4 eyes moved from ship to ship, calculating, planning. The arrival of reinforcements had restored some of his confidence. One small human vessel had surprised him. Yes. But now he had real numbers. He had power. He had the might of the Empire behind him. "Sub-Commander Relics," he said. "What do we know about their weapons?" Relic stepped forward nervously. "Very little, High Arbiter. The energy signature is unlike anything in our records. The beam that destroyed our ships seemed to unmake them, as if it erased them from existence. And their shields? We hit them with enough firepower to crack a planet. They didn't even notice." Volmek was silent for a long moment. He had never faced an enemy like this. In 10,000 years, the Velthari Empire had never met a species that could match their military technology. They had always been the strongest, the most advanced, the most feared. But he was High Arbiter. He had not earned that title by running from challenges. He had earned it by crushing every enemy that stood before him. "We will not retreat," he declared. "We will not show weakness. Prepare all ships for a coordinated assault. We will overwhelm them with numbers." "High Arbiter," Relic said carefully. "Perhaps we should wait, study them more, learn their weaknesses. They are 1 ship. We are 1,000. That is all we need to know." On the Defiance, Corporal Kim Ji-woo arrived on the bridge. She was the head of security, a small woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She had heard about the situation and come to offer her help, even though there wasn't much a security officer could do against a space fleet. "Captain," she said, "what are your orders?" "Right now, we wait. Admiral Choi is coming. Until then, we hold position and don't start anything. And if they start something?" Captain Park looked at her. "Then we finish it." The waiting was the hardest part. Minutes passed like hours. The Velthari fleet hung in space, a wall of metal and weapons. The Defiance sat at the center of it all. Tiny, but unafraid. Then the Velthari attacked. Every ship fired at once. The space around the Defiance turned white with energy. Beams and missiles and projectiles of every kind poured toward the small human vessel. It was the kind of attack that could destroy a moon. On the bridge, the crew watched their shield readings. The numbers barely moved. Engineer Bake reported that they were actually gaining power from the attack, not losing it. "This is getting silly," Lieutenant Yoon muttered. Captain Park agreed. The aliens weren't even hurting them. They were just making noise. But he couldn't let this go on forever. Eventually he would have to respond, and when he did, people would die. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Channel open. Velthari Fleet. This is Captain Park Do-hyun of the HSS Defiance. Your weapons cannot hurt us. We have shown you this twice now. We don't want to destroy your ships. We don't want to kill your soldiers. But if you continue this attack, we will defend ourselves. Please, stop. Think about what you're doing." High Arbiter Volmek's face appeared on screen. His stone skin was darker now, flushed with rage and frustration. "You think you can frighten us? You think we will surrender to one ship? I have conquered worlds, human. I have burned civilizations to ash. You are nothing. I'm trying to save your life, Captain Park said quietly. And the lives of everyone in your fleet. Then you are a fool. The transmission ended. Captain Park closed his eyes for a moment. He had tried. He had really tried. But some people didn't want to be saved. Charge all weapons, he said. Target their engines and weapon systems only. I don't want casualties if we can avoid them. The Defiance was a cargo ship. It was not designed for war. But like all human vessels, it carried defensive weapons. And like all human technology, those weapons were generations beyond anything else in the galaxy. The ship's cannons hummed with power, targeting computers locked onto enemy ships. And then, Captain Park gave the order. Fire. Golden beams lanced out from the Defiance. They moved faster than the eye could follow, striking ship after ship with perfect precision. But they didn't destroy the ships. They didn't vaporize them like before. Instead, they cut through specific systems. Engines went dark. Weapons powered down. Shields collapsed. In less than a minute, 50 Velthari warships were dead in space, disabled, helpless. But their life support systems were intact. Their crews were alive. The Velthari fleet stopped firing. Captain Park spoke again. High Arbiter, I have disabled 50 of your ships without killing a single member of your crew. I can do the same to the rest of your fleet. Or you can withdraw. The choice is yours. There was no response. On the Velthari flagship, chaos had taken hold. Officers were shouting. Technicians were trying desperately to understand what had happened. 50 ships had been neutralized in seconds. It wasn't possible. It wasn't fair. High Arbiter Volmek stood in the middle of the storm, absolutely still. His mind was racing. He had never lost a battle. Never. The thought of retreat was poison in his mouth. High Arbiter, Sub-Commander Relic said urgently, we must withdraw. This enemy is beyond us. We need time to study them, to develop new weapons, to find their weaknesses. If we stay here, we will lose everything. Volmek turned to look at him. You want me to run? To flee from a single ship? I want you to live. I want our soldiers to live. There is no shame in retreating from an enemy you cannot defeat. Like, the Emperor will. The Emperor will understand. He is wise. He knows that victory sometimes requires patience. Volmek was silent. His hands were shaking. He had never felt so helpless, so small. And then, salvation arrived. High Arbiter, an officer called out. New contacts dropping out of hyperspace. It's the Third Imperial Armada. 1,000 ships. Volmek felt hope surge in his chest. The Third Armada was the pride of the Empire. Their ships were the newest and most powerful. Their commander was Grand Admiral Thesara, one of the greatest military minds in Velthari history. Now, Volmek said, his confidence returning. Now, we will see what these humans truly are. On the Defiance, Lieutenant Yoon reported the new arrivals. 1,000 more ships, Captain. Same class as the others, but newer. Captain Park rubbed his temples. This was getting out of hand. He was one cargo ship against 2,000 warships. Even with human technology, there were limits. He wasn't sure where those limits were exactly, but he didn't want to find out today. Any word from Admiral Choi? She'll be here in 3 hours. 3 hours. A lot could happen in 3 hours. Then, something changed. Lieutenant Yoon's eyes went wide as she listened to her earpiece. Captain, the new fleet is hailing us, but not the one we were fighting. This is their Grand Admiral. She wants to talk. Put her through. The screen changed. A new Velthari appeared. This one was female, with lighter gray skin and intelligent eyes. She wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer, But she didn't look angry. She looked curious. "Human vessel," she said. "I am Grand Admiral Thesara of the Velthari Empire. I have reviewed the battle data from High Arbiter Volmek's engagement with you. I must admit, I am impressed and concerned. You have technology that we have never seen before. Weapons that can disable our ships without destroying them. Shields that laugh at our attacks. I have questions. I'll answer what I can," Captain Park said carefully. "Are you alone? Or are there others like you?" Captain Park smiled slightly. "Admiral, I'm a cargo ship. I carry food and medicine to mining colonies. I'm probably the weakest military vessel humanity has. We have actual warships that would make me look like a toy." The Grand Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost respectful. "Then I think we need to talk. Really talk. Because if what you say is true, then this war is already over, and continuing it would only cause pointless death." For the first time since the Velthari arrived, Captain Park felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could get through this without any more violence. But before he could respond, High Arbiter Volmek's voice cut in, furious and desperate. "Grand Admiral, you cannot negotiate with these creatures. They are enemies of the Empire. We must destroy them." Grand Admiral Thesara's expression hardened. "High Arbiter, you have lost. Accept it with dignity." "I will not." Silence. The word was cold and absolute. "You have done enough damage today. Now let those with wisdom speak." Captain Park watched this exchange with great interest. There was division in the enemy ranks. That could be useful, or it could make everything much more dangerous. He checked the time. Still 3 hours until Admiral Choi arrived. It was going to be a long wait. Admiral Choi Subin arrived exactly on time. Her fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 15 ships moving as one. They were not large ships. They were not impressive to look at. Next to the 2,000 Velthari warships, they seemed like insects beside giants. But size meant nothing anymore. Admiral Choi was a small woman, with gray hair and calm eyes. She had served in Earth's defense forces for 40 years. She had seen the end of the Great Solar War. She had helped rebuild humanity from the ashes of its own destruction. Nothing surprised her anymore. "Captain Park," she said over the communication channel, "I hear you've been making friends." Captain Park smiled for the first time in hours. "You could say that, Admiral. The situation is complicated. It always is. Give me the short version. 2,000 alien warships. They call themselves the Velthari Empire. They tried to claim Earth's territory. I declined. They attacked. I defended. Now they know we're dangerous, but they don't want to admit it. Their High Arbiter wants to keep fighting. Their Grand Admiral wants to talk. And what do you want?" Captain Park thought about it. "I want to go home and have a hot meal, but I'll settle for not killing anyone else today." Admiral Choi nodded. "Then, let's see what we can do about that." She turned to her second-in-command, a tall man named No Minho. "Commander, put me through to both Velthari commanders. Let's get everyone talking." The screen split into multiple views. On one side was Grand Admiral Thesara, looking professional and controlled. On the other was High Arbiter Volmek, his face dark, with barely contained fury. Between them was Admiral Choi, small but somehow commanding all attention. "I am Admiral Choi Subin, of the Earth Defense Forces," she said. "I am here to resolve this situation peacefully if possible. Grand Admiral Thesara, I understand you want to negotiate. I am willing to listen." Thesara inclined her head respectfully. "Admiral, I will be direct. I have studied the battle data. Your cargo ship defeated our fleet without effort. Your weapons are beyond anything we possess. I am a military commander. I know when I am outmatched. Continuing this conflict would only result in the deaths of my soldiers, for nothing. I wish to avoid that. That is wise, Admiral Choi said. High Arbiter Volmec, do you share this view? Volmec's jaw tightened. I serve the Emperor. I serve the Empire. I do not surrender to anyone. No one is asking you to surrender, Admiral Choi replied. We are asking you to stop a fight that you cannot win. There is no dishonor in that. You know nothing of honor. I know that honor does not require pointless death. On the Defiance, Dr. Shin Unji watched this conversation carefully. She was the ship's xenolinguist and cultural analyst. A quiet woman who spent most of her time studying languages and societies. She had been analyzing the Velthari since their first transmission, and she had learned a great deal. Captain, she said quietly, I need to tell you something about the Velthari. Captain Park glanced at her. They're a warrior culture. Their entire society is built on conquest. They've never lost a war. Not in 10,000 years. To them, defeat isn't just a military failure. It's an existential crisis. If they lose to us, everything they believe about themselves will be shattered. So they'll keep fighting even if it's hopeless? Some of them will. The High Arbiter certainly will. But others, like the Grand Admiral, might be more flexible. The question is, who has more power? Captain Park considered this. In a way, he understood the Velthari. Humanity had been like them once. Proud, aggressive, convinced that strength was the only thing that mattered. It had nearly destroyed them. On the main screen, Admiral Choi was still talking to the Velthari commanders. Grand Admiral, perhaps it would help if I explained something about humanity. We were not always peaceful. 200 years ago, we had our own great war. We called it the Great Solar War. We fought each other with weapons that could destroy planets. We nearly made ourselves extinct. We nearly made ourselves extinct. The Grand Admiral's eyes narrowed with interest. You warred among yourselves? We did. And we learned something from it. We learned that strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. When the war ended, we made a choice. We would never again use our power to conquer or dominate. We would only use it to defend ourselves and to help others. And yet your technology is clearly designed for war. Our technology is designed to end wars. Quickly, and with as few deaths as possible. We don't want to fight you, Grand Admiral. We don't want to fight anyone. But if someone forces us to fight, we will make sure it ends fast. High Arbiter Volmec made a sound of disgust. This is weakness. This is cowardice. A true warrior does not apologize for his strength. Admiral Choi looked at him calmly. High Arbiter, let me ask you something. Your empire has conquered 10,000 worlds. How many species have you destroyed? How many civilizations have you ended? Volmec raised his chin proudly. Hundreds. Those who resisted were eliminated. And what did you gain from that? Power, territory, resources. And was it worth it? The billions of lives you took? The cultures you erased? Was it worth it? Volmec hesitated. It was just for a moment, just a flicker of uncertainty in his 4 eyes. But Dr. Shin noticed it. He's not as certain as he pretends, she murmured. Admiral Choi continued. We took something different from our war. We learned that the greatest victory is the one where no one has to die. We learned that true strength is the ability to destroy, but the wisdom not to. That is why we are offering you peace, High Arbiter. Not because we are weak, because we are strong enough to make a different choice. The silence that followed was heavy. Even across the vacuum of space, everyone could feel it. Then the Grand Admiral spoke. High Arbiter Volmec, I am assuming command of this operation. Volmec's head snapped toward her. You cannot. I can. Imperial military law gives me authority over all forces in any engagement where I am the senior commander. You know this. Your protest is noted and ignored. Volmec looked like he wanted to explode. His hands were shaking. His face was dark with rage. But he said nothing. Thesara turned back to Admiral Choi. "Admiral, I am prepared to negotiate a withdrawal. But I must inform you that this is not over. The Emperor will not accept this defeat easily. He will want answers. He may want revenge. Then we will deal with that when it comes. For now, let's focus on getting your ships home safely." The negotiations took another hour. Details were discussed. Terms were agreed upon. The Velthari would withdraw from human space. There would be no more attacks. A line of communication would be established for future discussions. It wasn't a peace treaty. It was a pause. But it was something. As the Velthari fleet began to turn away, Commander No Minho approached Admiral Choi. "Admiral, do you really think this is over?" "No," she said honestly. "This is just the beginning. The Velthari Empire won't forget today. They'll go home, and they'll think about what happened. Some of them will want peace. Some will want war. The question is, which side will win? And what do we do in the meantime? We prepare. We stay alert. And we hope that wisdom wins over pride." On the Defiance, Captain Park watched the enemy fleet leave. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt tired. So very tired. Lieutenant Yoon came to stand beside him. "We did it. Captain. We survived. We did more than survive. We changed things. I'm not sure that's good." "What do you mean?" Captain Park gestured at the retreating ships. "They came here thinking they were the most powerful force in the galaxy. Now they know they're not. That kind of knowledge, it can make people do strange things. Desperate things. You think they'll come back? I think someone will. Maybe the Velthari. Maybe someone else. We showed the galaxy what humans can do today. Some will respect us for it. Some will fear us. And some will want to prove that they're stronger." He turned away from the screen. "But that's a problem for tomorrow. Right now, I want to finish our cargo run and go home. We've got people waiting for these supplies." Lieutenant Yoon smiled. As the Defiance resumed its course toward the mining colony, Captain Park allowed himself one small hope. Maybe the galaxy would surprise him. Maybe peace was possible. Maybe the Velthari would learn the same lesson humanity had learned 200 years ago. But he wasn't counting on it. Far away, on the Velthari flagship, Grand Admiral Thesara sat alone in her quarters. She was reviewing the battle data again, studying every detail of the human weapons. They were remarkable, elegant, and terrifying. But what struck her most was not the technology. It was what Admiral Choi had said, about strength and wisdom, about the choice not to destroy. The Velthari had never made that choice. They had always destroyed. It was what they did. It was who they were. But maybe, Thesara thought, it didn't have to be. She began composing a message to the Emperor. It would not be easy to convince him. He was old and proud and set in his ways. But she had to try. Because if the humans were right, if there was a better way, then everything the Velthari believed was wrong. And that was a terrifying thought indeed. The message reached Earth 3 days later. It came from the Velthari Emperor himself, and it demanded an explanation. The tone was angry. The words were threatening. But underneath all of that, there was something else. Something that sounded almost like fear. Ambassador Oh Yujin read the message in her office at the Earth Diplomatic Center. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and a patient voice. She had spent her life talking to people who didn't want to listen. The Velthari would be no different. "They want a meeting," she said to her assistant. "The Emperor wants to speak with a human representative face to face. Is that safe? Probably not. But we have to try." The meeting was arranged for neutral space, a region between human territory and the Velthari Empire. Ambassador O traveled there on a diplomatic vessel with a small escort. When she arrived, she found a Velthari station waiting for her. It was huge, a city floating in the void, and it was filled with soldiers. She was not afraid. Emperor Kolvath was old. His gray skin had darkened with age, and his 4 eyes were clouded. But there was still power in him. Still authority. He sat on a throne made of metal and crystal, and he looked down at Ambassador O like she was an insect. "You are the human representative," he said. "I am Ambassador O Eugene. I speak for Earth and all human territories." "Then speak. Explain to me why I should not send every ship in my empire to destroy your species." Ambassador O remained calm. She had expected this. "Your Majesty, you could certainly try. But I think we both know how that would end." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "No. I am stating a fact. Your High Arbiter attacked one of our cargo ships. A cargo ship. And it defeated his entire fleet. We are not seeking war with you. But if war comes, we will not lose." The silence in the throne room was absolute. Every Velthari present stared at the small human woman who dared to speak this way to their emperor. Kolvath leaned forward. "Then what do you want? Power? Territory? Tribute? We want none of those things." "Then what?" Ambassador O took a breath. This was the important part. This was where everything could change or fall apart. "We want peace. We want to trade with your empire. We want to share knowledge and culture. We want to be neighbors, not enemies." The Emperor looked at her like she had lost her mind. "You have the power to conquer us, to take everything we have. And you want to be neighbors?" "Yes. Why?" It was such a simple question. Such a human question. Ambassador O thought about how to answer it. 200 years ago, she said, humanity almost destroyed itself. We had wars that killed billions. We poisoned our own planet. We came within days of complete extinction. And when it was over, when we looked at what we had done, we made a promise. We promised that we would never again use our strength to dominate others. We would use it to protect, to help, to build. That is who we are now. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured to someone at the side of the room. An old Velthari stepped forward. He wore the robes of a scholar, not a soldier. "This is Imperial Scholar Thesix," the Emperor said. "He has been studying your species since the incident. Tell her what you found." Scholar Thesix bowed to Ambassador O. His eyes were curious, not hostile. "Ambassador, I have reviewed all available data on humanity. Your history, your culture, your wars. I must admit, I am confused." "Confused about what?" "About how you survived. Your species is young. You have existed for only a fraction of the time that the Velthari have. And yet you developed technology that surpasses anything in the galaxy. How is that possible?" Ambassador O smiled sadly. "Because we had to. When you are about to destroy yourself, you learn very quickly. We poured everything we had into advancement. Science, engineering, medicine. We worked together because we had no other choice. And when we finally achieved peace, we kept working. We kept learning. We became what we are today, not because we are special, but because we were desperate." Scholar Thesix nodded slowly. "So, your strength comes from your weakness. Our strength comes from our mistakes. We learned from them. We grew from them. And now we use that strength to make sure no one else has to make the same mistakes." The Emperor made a sound. It might have been a laugh. It might have been something else. "You are a strange species. You have the power of gods, and you want to use it to help others. I do not understand you." End quote. "You can too, one about of that. You don't have to understand us," Ambassador O said. "You just have to decide if you want to work with us or against us." Another silence. The Emperor looked at Scholar Thesix. He looked at his guards. He looked at his throne. And then he looked back at Ambassador O. Grand Admiral Thesara spoke highly of your Admiral Choi, he said. She said that the human was honorable, wise, not what she expected from a warrior. Admiral Choi is one of our best. The Grand Admiral also said that you could have destroyed our entire fleet, 2,000 ships, and you chose not to. That is correct. Why? You could have eliminated a threat, made the Empire think twice about ever challenging you again. Ambassador O met his eyes steadily. Because those ships were filled with people, soldiers with families, with hopes and dreams. They were only following orders. They didn't deserve to die for the mistakes of their commanders. The Emperor stared at her. Something was happening behind his eyes. Something was changing. But Ambassador O couldn't tell if it was good or bad. Finally, he spoke. I have ruled the Empire for 300 years. I have conquered worlds without number. I have ended species that dared to defy me. I have always believed that strength was the only thing that mattered, that mercy was weakness, that compassion was foolishness. He paused. No, Numbermen. Numbermen, you have made me question that belief. Is that a good thing? I don't know yet. He stood up from his throne. He was tall, even for a Velthari, and despite his age, there was still strength in him. I will not promise peace, he said. My people would not accept it. Not yet. But I will promise this. There will be no more attacks on human territory. There will be no more attempts to claim your worlds. We will watch you. We will study you. And perhaps, in time, we will learn from you. Ambassador O bowed her head. That is all we ask, Your Majesty. She turned to leave, but the Emperor called out to her. Ambassador, one more question. Yes? If we had come to you peacefully, if we had asked for trade and friendship, instead of demanding surrender, would you have helped us? Ambassador O looked at him for a long moment. Yes, we would have helped you. We would have been happy to. The Emperor's expression was unreadable. Then we were fools. Everyone is a fool sometimes, Your Majesty. What matters is what you do next. She left the station and returned to her ship. As they jumped to hyperspace, she allowed herself to breathe. The meeting had gone better than she expected. Not good, but better. Back on the station, Emperor Kolvath sat alone in his throne room. Scholar Thesix stood nearby, waiting. What do you think? The Emperor asked. I think they are telling the truth. They don't want to conquer us. They truly want peace. And that makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have ever faced. Thesix looked surprised. Dangerous? How? The Emperor's old eyes were troubled. Because they are going to change us. Not with weapons. Not with war. With ideas. With kindness. With mercy. Those things are more powerful than any fleet. He shook his head. We have ruled by fear for 10,000 years. What happens when our people learn there is another way. Perhaps they learn to be better. Perhaps, or perhaps the Empire falls apart. Thesix was quiet for a moment. Then he said, would that be such a bad thing? 100 cents. The Emperor didn't answer. But his silence said everything. Across the galaxy, the news of the human encounter spread. Other species heard about the Velthari defeat. They heard about the weapons that could disable a ship without destroying it. They heard about the humans who asked for peace instead of surrender. And in the dark corners of the Empire, where conquered species suffered under Velthari rule, hope began to grow. Small at first, quiet, but growing. Change was coming, and nothing would ever be the same. The rebellions started small. A factory that refused to meet its quota. A city that refused to pay tribute. A single planet that declared independence and dared the Empire to respond. The Velthari military wanted to crush them immediately. That was what they had always done. But this time, something was different. Every time they prepared to attack, Human ships appeared in orbit around the rebellious world. The ships didn't fire. They didn't threaten. They just floated there, silent and patient. And the Velthari remembered what had happened to High Arbiter Volmek's fleet. Within months, the rebellions had spread to hundreds of worlds. Species that had been conquered generations ago found their courage again. They saw the humans and thought, if they can stand against the Empire, so can we. On Earth, the government debated what to do. Some wanted to stay out of it. This was not humanity's war. They had no obligation to help anyone. Others argued that they had started this by showing the galaxy what was possible. They had a responsibility to see it through. Captain Park Do-hyun was called to speak before the Earth Council. "We didn't ask for this," he said. "We didn't want it. But it happened. And now there are billions of people across the galaxy looking at us and wondering if we're going to help them or leave them to suffer." He paused. "I'm not a politician. I'm just a cargo captain. But I know right from wrong. Those people are being oppressed. They're being hurt. And we have the power to stop it." "At what cost?" asked Councilwoman Bakmire. "If we intervene, we could be drawn into a war that lasts for centuries. We could lose everything we've built. If we don't intervene, we lose something more important. We lose who we are." The debate continued for weeks. In the end, they reached a compromise. Humanity would not fight anyone's war for them. They would not send troops or weapons to the rebels, but they would provide protection. Any world that declared independence would be given a choice. Accept a human ship in orbit as a guardian. That ship would not attack the Empire, but it would defend the planet if the Empire attacked first. It was not war. It was something else, something new. Ambassador O. Eugen delivered the message to Emperor Kolvath personally. She stood before his throne again and explained humanity's position calmly and clearly. The Emperor listened in silence. When she finished, he asked a single question. "You would protect those who betray us? We would protect those who want to be free. That is the same thing." "No, Your Majesty, it is not." The Emperor's hands gripped the arms of his throne. He was angry. She could see that. But he was also afraid. The Empire was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "If you do this," he said, "you will destroy us. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to change." "Change?" He spat the word like it was poison. "We are the Velthari. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We do not change. We not change." Ambassador O looked at him with something like pity. "Then you will fall. Not because of us, because of yourselves. Because you cannot let go of the past." She left the station for the last time. She never saw the Emperor again. The Empire tried to stop the rebellions. They sent fleets to punish the worlds that had declared independence. And every time, they found human ships waiting for them. The battles, if they could be called that, were short and one-sided. The Velthari would attack. The human ships would disable them. No deaths. No destruction. Just silence and shame. After a dozen such encounters, the Velthari military began to refuse orders. Commanders who had spent their lives conquering worlds suddenly found that they could not stomach any more pointless defeat. They withdrew their ships and waited. Emperor Kolvath called a meeting of his highest advisors. Grand Admiral Thessara was there. So was Scholar Thesix. And so was High Arbiter Volmek, who had been quietly reassigned to a minor position after his failure. "The Empire is dying," the Emperor said. His voice was tired. "Old. Every day, more worlds break away. Our military is losing its will to fight. Our people are beginning to question everything we have built." He looked around the room. "Tell me what to do." High Arbiter Volmek stood up. "Fight. Fight until there is nothing left. We are Velthari. We do not surrender. And die for nothing?" Grand Admiral Thessara shook her head. That is not courage. That is stupidity. Then what would you have us do? Beg the humans for mercy? I would have us survive. And perhaps I become something better. Scholar Thesix stepped forward. Your Majesty, I have spent months studying the humans and the worlds that are breaking away from us. I have learned something. The species we conquered, they do not hate us because we are strong. They hate us because we were cruel, because we took everything from them and gave nothing back. He paused. If we had ruled with wisdom instead of fear, they would not be rebelling now. The Emperor stared at him. You are saying this is our fault? I am saying we have a choice. We can keep fighting and lose everything. Or we can let go and maybe save something. Maybe even save ourselves. I mended. Maybe even save ourselves. The room was silent. Emperor Kolvath closed his eyes. He had ruled for 300 years. He had built the greatest empire the galaxy had ever seen. And now, it was ending. Not with a great war or a noble last stand. It was ending because a cargo ship had shown the galaxy that there was another way. Very well, he said at last. Issue the declaration. The announcement shocked the galaxy. Emperor Kolvath, ruler of the Velthari Empire, declared the dissolution of all territorial claims. Every conquered world was granted immediate independence. The empire would withdraw to its original borders and seek peaceful relations with all species. It was not surrender. It was transformation. Ambassador O was the first human to respond. She sent a message to the Emperor offering humanity's help in establishing a new galactic council, a gathering of equals where all species could work together, trade, share knowledge, solve problems. The Emperor accepted. 1 year later, the first meeting of the Galactic Council took place on a station in neutral space. Dozens of species attended, including the Velthari. They sat at the same table as the people they had once conquered, and they listened as much as they spoke. Admiral Choi Subin was there. So was Ambassador O. And Captain Park Do-hyun, who had been asked to represent the ordinary people of Earth. He felt out of place among all the diplomats and leaders, but he came anyway. At one point, a representative from a species called the Malori approached him. The Malori had been enslaved by the Velthari for 2,000 years. Now they were free. Captain Park, the Malori said, I wanted to thank you. You started all of this. Park shook his head. I didn't start anything. I just refused to surrender. That is the same thing. Park thought about it. Maybe it was. After the meeting, he stood by a window and looked out at the stars. Lieutenant Yoon found him there. What are you thinking about? She asked. I'm thinking about how one moment can change everything. We were just doing a cargo run. Just another day. And then, those ships appeared. And suddenly, nothing was the same. Do you regret it? Park considered the question. He thought about the people who had died when he fired on the Velthari fleet. He thought about the chaos and upheaval that had followed. He thought about all the uncertainty that still lay ahead. No, he said finally. I don't regret it. But I'm still not sure we did the right thing. We changed the galaxy. We didn't ask permission. We just did it. Maybe that's what the galaxy needed. Maybe. Or maybe we just made things worse in ways we can't see yet. Yoon smiled. That's the thing about doing something good. You never know if it's actually good until later. Sometimes, much later. Park nodded slowly. I suppose you're right. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Far away, on the Velthari homeworld, High Arbiter Volmek sat alone in his quarters. He had been stripped of his rank and his honor. He was nothing now. Just an old soldier in a world that had no use for soldiers. He thought about what had happened. About the human cargo ship that had humiliated him. About the empire that had abandoned everything it stood for. About a galaxy where mercy was considered strength and conquest was considered weakness. He didn't understand it. He would never understand it. But a small part of him, a part he would never admit to anyone, wondered if maybe he was the one who had been wrong all along. Maybe. Just maybe. On the Defiance, Captain Park sat in his chair on the bridge and watched the stars pass by on the main screen. It was a quiet day. He liked quiet days. "Captain," said Lieutenant Yoon. "We're approaching the colony. ETA. 2 hours. Good. Let's get these supplies delivered." The ship moved on, carrying food and medicine to people who needed them. Just another cargo run. Just another day. But Captain Park knew better. Nothing was ever just another day. Every moment had the potential to change everything. You just had to be ready for it. 40 C. End quote. In C. He smiled and leaned back in his chair. The galaxy was different now. Better. Maybe. Maybe not. Only time would tell. But whatever came next, humanity would face it the same way they always had. Together. And maybe, with a little laughter.